I want to talk about my start of how I got into the Draconic and Draconian path. And I guess you could also count the Dragon path as well. At this point, to me, it's kind of intermingled a little bit. Of course, they'll have their own little separate ways once you get to a certain point, amongst other things. Sometimes I do get them confused together because it's been years since I started. And sometimes I have to go back to my friends and one of my mentors to clarify some things, or like they'll clarify for me in like comments on a video if I post something, or in a comment or whatever if they see it. Because sometimes, like I said, I get things confused because I retain a lot of stuff. It's just a matter of not getting it mixed up or remembering parts of things. So I, just in general, witchcraft, all that stuff, in general, I have unofficially practiced my whole life. Obviously, I did not know until after, social media started coming through a little bit more. I grew up Baptist. That's how I grew up starting. Of course, some of the stuff that I grew up learning did not know it was considered witchcraft or part of like another, like pagan or whatever at the time. Now social media has kind of helped brighten a lot of that out, on top of a little bit coming from school, not as much in my town. But that's where I started off on the spiritual journey, I guess you could say. I didn't really start getting into it till I tried in 5th grade. Did not work because didn't understand how to really access the internet. I had access to it, but couldn't understand where to even start at that point. I had found a tarot deck in my mom's room in middle school. I stole it, not gonna lie. She did catch it, but I don't think she really cared at that point because she didn't do anything with it. And I have lost that deck now. At this point, I'm just gonna say 5 times since 2012. Mind you, it's a tarot deck. It's an old deck. It's older than me. I have suspicions of where that is currently, but I don't got time for that right now. I mean, I do, but that's besides that. But I tried using that, I want to say, I think 7th grade was when I started using it. Didn't understand anything, of course, even with the tiny itty bitty book that came in it. Mind you, it was just little papers. And again, this is an old deck, and they were like, I think it was like abstract art with like clowns. Still suspicious of some of those pictures because they're a little creepy, but I used it anyway because that was kind of my first tarot deck, but it wasn't mine, it was my mom's, and I just took it. Did not put it back, though she caught it with me, and I guess she just, I don't know. And I can't ask her. I mean, I could, just not in the normal way, because she passed, like, almost 12 years ago. Then, I want to say, before she passed, I lost it. Don't know how it made the move between the apartment and here, because I still live in my grandparents' house with my grandpa and my brother, my little brother more specifically, and found it a couple months later. After, actually I can't even say a couple months because this room wasn't done being, like, the walls and stuff and the floor wasn't done until summer of 2014, because there were 3 of us in one room, because in that room wasn't even suitable at the moment, but it was kind of temporary. And then after we unpacked, because we had to get rid of a lot of stuff, which really sucked, because some of, like, my childhood got thrown out, and I had no option to say I wanted to keep it. But at some point when I, unpacking whatever, I found it. Used it a little bit, lost it again. Found it sometime my freshman year. I tried using it once at school because I used it in middle school, and I remember doing it at lunch, getting lots of looks. And my nickname in middle school was the Witch. One person in particular wouldn't let it down. Even once I reminded him in high school, he didn't let it down even then. Also didn't help, I wore a pentagram all the time because my mom gave it to me. And again, this is just kind of the start basis of like the curiosity, I guess you could say. Lost it freshman year. Didn't see it till I think senior year. Lost it again. Found it in college. Lost it again. Have not seen it since. I have. Around, give or take, I have lost count again. Almost 50 decks in general at the moment between Oracle and Tarot. Just saying. That's not including the missing one. I didn't start getting into it again until I want to say, what year did I get that? I think it was sophomore or junior year of high school when the House of Night book series came out with an Oracle deck from the house, the cards were based off of the House of Night with Nyx. That's also where that started too. I convinced my grandma to get that for me. I used that. I used that in high school. I used it here. I have pictures saved, even I think on Facebook, on my old iPod. Of course, that thing won't turn on anymore even when I try to charge it. But it's archived on one of the many apps of some of the readings I did for myself. At that point, I kind of understood a little bit more. Again, didn't really get fully into the practice. Around senior year, around college, I started actually making altars. That was before I kind of started to also get onto TikTok. I signed up for TikTok in 2018. Forgot about that. I don't know why. I can't remember if it was with my iPod or my Android at that point, because I didn't have an iPhone up until the last couple years. Then when TikTok, for me, once I rejoined, of course, it wasn't TikTok when I first joined, it was still Musical.ly. Completely forgot about that. Because I didn't understand how it works, so I kind of got off of it after one point. So when I got back on it in 2019, on my birthday, I would say sometime after that, I started getting into it more when COVID hit. Like, hard hit, because I was depressed all the time. Literally could not leave my house because of my grandma, because she was immune compromised. So I was stuck in my room, could not leave the house. I mean, I could step outside, but there wasn't much I could do. So TikTok was my release. And got on Witch Talk eventually. Learned some more things, kind of picked up books. I have a lot of books now, specifically for things along those lines. Made a lot more altars. I have so many altars now. I've had to try to condense this into some individual ones into community altars, because that's how many I have. There are some that have their own altar, whether or not they even have a community altar or not, depending on a lot of factors. of course, I did have to ask some of them if it was okay if I condensed them into the community altar, because I don't, at the moment, have the room to space everyone out like I would like for certain deities, entities, etc. Some of them have misplaced altars. They're just kind of everywhere. Chaos. And in the time of COVID, when I think it was when I started to go back to college with COVID, because I tried. It did not work. I started getting on Dragon Talk. Or Dragon Witch Talk. Either way. I started getting on that FYP quite a lot. You know, at that point I had done a few rituals, you know, nothing huge. I've posted a couple things on TikTok at that point, before I like really dove into it. Then the two main people I had popping up on my FYP, I still talk to them on occasions, not as frequently, but on occasions. You know, especially if I have a question about something, or just talking to them about life, you know, trying to catch up, make sure, you know, everyone's okay, because we have our moments. I can't remember who I saw first, whether it was Cecilia or Merlin. Can't remember who I saw first, but at that point, the person I was seeing the most was Merlin. I did see Cecilia on occasions, on my FYP. Mind you, this was like mid 2020. Oh my lord. I am running on 2 hours of sleep at the moment. And you know, I just kind of, there were a couple of other, I think 1 or 2 other people that showed up on occasions, but none that didn't like give a lot of info, or, you know, stuff like that caught my interest enough to like stay to continue watching it, except for them. After a while, you know, I looked into it a little bit more, because, you know, they had their own platforms, they had their own businesses already started at that point. Of course, they're a lot bigger now than they were when I found them. I eventually, at that point, I don't think Cecilia had, mind you, it's been over 5 years at this point. I don't think Cecilia had a reading of connecting with your dragon spirit guide. I can't remember. But I know Merlin had one, or Spirit of Alchemy. Either way, she goes by both. Depending on which platform, but she goes by either one. I booked one of her readings. Well, bought one of her readings. Of course, you know, there's always the potential of not having one, and she laid that out like, you know, there's a possibility you won't have one, you know, etc., etc. She listed out, you know, what would happen and all that. And, you know, they are very, very, very detailed. When it came in, it was like, I think it took me, I want to say 2 hours, maybe 2.5, to actually read the whole email. Mind you, this was like late 2020 at this point. I would think it might have been like December-ish, give or take. I'd have to go through my emails, and that's a lot of work for how long it's been, which I know I can condense down, but and then finding out I had one, I dove in. Of course, I didn't exactly know where to start at that point. She kind of gave me a little guidance of where I could start, you know, on top of her own input, and she helped mentor me as well a little bit in between certain, you know, whatever I had going on. And then she, at the time, wasn't training for the most part at that point, because she was still in training for High Priestess, or she had just started, so she wasn't as sure about it, if I remember correctly. She pointed me to Cecilia for mentorship to get into it. I got onto her side a little bit more. At that point, more of her videos were on my FYP. Finally reached out to her, got on, started paying for her mentorship at that point. We went through so many chats. I mean, like, individually and as a group, because there were a group of us. Sadly, that group of us ended with only 2 of us, in a sense, graduating. And, I mean, I can't even remember how many people we started out with, because people were in and out, in and out, in and out. Some people had to get kicked out for reasons, which is why her rules have gotten a lot longer over the years, because of some things that have happened in chats. Some of it I caught, some of it I did not, and some of it I heard after the fact. This has been over the years, so and I've learned a lot from both of them. Try not to confuse certain things, because so much has happened also in just 5 years alone, let alone the last month. Oh my gosh. But that's where I started out. That's how I even found it. Because, you know, I've always been interested in, like, the weird stuff. You know, I always was interested in dragons. You know, it's one of those things, like, you don't really think about it. You know, I always had obsessions. I had hordes of stuff growing up. Still do, not gonna lie. Trying to get better on that one. Of course, I might not get completely better, especially working with them, but, sorry. Then, you know, years into it, I would say, for me, because everyone's path is different, when they're on one or more of those paths that involve the dragons. And so if you end up eventually receiving a title, the length of time is not the same for everyone. Like Merlin, one of her recent videos, or in some of her older videos, she became a high priestess about 5 years ago. Cecilia, I can't honestly remember how long, because she's been on the path for a long time, since she grew up doing a lot of this stuff. So she's been, and she's like, also with this, like, you still learn. You don't get the title and stop. You got to keep going, because if you, and that's one of the things that they push you on. You can't stall, because how are you supposed to get better? How are you supposed to be where you want to be if you're not gonna challenge yourself, get out of the comfort zone? It's okay to be in it for a little bit, but you don't want to stay in it, because then after a while you're just gonna get, in a sense, lazy, or a version of it. So sometimes you gotta shake it up. Chaos, essentially. And if you don't do it yourself, they will do it for you, and you ain't gonna like it. Especially when they tell you to do certain things and you don't want to listen. You'll find out one way or another. I have repeatedly. Sometimes I still do it. I'm trying to get better, I promise. And, you know, I was mentored by Cecilia. Like, I still consider her a mentor because I still go to her for questions. Sometimes I'll go to Merlin, depending on the question, if I can't find it somewhere else, because I have some books. And Cecilia has her own list of books that she recommends. Merlin, I think, has her own list as well, depending on what side of the dragon path you want to go with. Draconian, Draconic. I had ended up starting a business early of 2023 that I also put as a devotion of my main dragon spirit guide, which I did get her permission to basically use my spirit guide's face as my business, because that was, to me, a offering of sorts for her and everything she's done for me, whether in this life or past lives. Like, that was my, like, here you go, you're with me anyway, so here you go. And I called my business the Draconic Priestess's Business. I had some issues with the name, but at that point I had already established, trust me, I had established my name in this town. It's gotten better. I haven't had as many people yelling or trying to talk me down about it as much. And people have actually been honestly asking me genuine questions this past year alone. When I first started out, it was bad. Getting called out by Christian people. I wish I was joking. Honestly, was not surprised. I just answered them as best as I could and professionally. I'm like, I grew up Baptist. I still believe. I would go to church if I didn't feel like I was going to get immediately judged the second I walked in still. And that was before I even started the path. Like, there are other reasons why I don't go to church like I want anymore. It's not just that anymore, after finding out other things. I believe in a lot of paths and cultures and stuff like that as well. It's not just Christianity. I am very open, which I don't know the Bible by heart. But if I remember correctly, one of the things in there that says, love thy neighbor. Not to judge him, just saying. Of course, there'll probably be some people on here going off about that part. But I literally had people coming up to my table at my farmer's market and judging me for anywhere from, like, whether it was just looking at me and you could tell they were judging me, or coming up to me and giving me a whole speech. And I'll sit there, I'll listen. Trust me, I listen. Doesn't mean I'm going to follow what you want me to do. Because I'm doing what makes me happy. I also work with angels. Not as much, but I do work with them on occasions. Again, I still believe in it. I did not completely deplete myself of that path, because that's how I grew up. And that's kind of, to me, when I had the issue this past year, it wasn't the issue of the business of the name and trying to change it, because I had already done tax stuff on it, and I'm trying to figure, like, I don't know how to even try to even start that, amongst other things. But it's not a name to me, it is also a title, not just for me, but other people I know. That was the other thing. It's not just a name. It was something I, at that point, was earning. Months later, I ended up earning it. towards the end of 2023. It has actually been now over 2 years since I earned the title. I don't, like, I do post, you know, I have it usually in my bio, you know, owner of my business name. And like in my business bio, I say, you know, Draconic High Priestess, you know, Oracle. There are other things I could also add, but they're just main ones. It's just easier for me. And like I said, of course, I had officially earned it over 2 years ago. Of course, I didn't know until I'm like, I think I was sitting in my bed and I'm just sitting here, I'm like thinking, because this is how I find a lot of things out. I'm just sitting here thinking like, I should probably check up on that info. At that point, I wasn't as in tuned with myself and my intuition. At that point, I was still using the pendulum. I don't rely on it like I used to. And I used it, and I'm like, have I completed, you know, my training? Said yes. I'm like, so does that make me a Draconic High Priestess? Said yes. I confirmed it by asking it a few different ways. I may have made her a little upset because I was going a little overboard on the question. But just to verify my feeling, confirmation, you know, intuition, because at that point I wasn't done, you know, building my intuition at that point. It's a lot better. Sometimes it falters. Sometimes I'm not paying attention and stuff happens. I find out later. Or at that moment. But that's kind of where I started off and where I kind of am. And trust me, like, my business has grown a lot more. I do dragon readings. I have like specific dragon deities or my own dragons with their permission. Again, that is big thing, is getting their permission. Like, is it okay to use their name? You know, is it okay to do this? It's respect. That is one of the big things, is respect. Whether it's when it's involving them and or their culture, especially depending on where they're from, or if they're already very well known. And there's a list I could probably think of off the top of my head, like Leviathan, Apep. I know I pronounced that wrong, but that's the best my speech impediment is going to help me with at the moment. I can't even pronounce that one. I can think of the spelling kind of. Tiamat, again, pronunciation, but there's other ones, but those are like dragon. And then there are deities that have dragon face, which are completely or of the same nature, but just that's not their main face in a way. Like, they have their own like mask, I guess you can say, or have essence of dragon or serpent energy. And of that essence, you got Hecate or Hecate. I know there's a couple other ways to pronounce it. I know a couple months ago I found out Brigitte apparently is also associated, because she has an association with serpents. Found that one out, shocked me, because she's my patron, sorry. Again, very tired. Which very shocked me. I'm like, that makes sense. But you know, I'm still learning. You know, sometimes I forget things. I'm a person still. Stuff happens, you know. We all have our moments. We all make mistakes. As long as it's cleared up, you know, our apologies needed, you know. Depending on the situation, I don't like doing apologies if it's not needed or necessary for the most part, I guess. but doesn't mean I won't say one. If you see me taking a while to do one, it's probably because I'm trying to figure out how to word it properly, or like trying to come to the person that I'm trying to apologize to like how do I come to them and apologize to them, because sometimes I like doing it to, you know, face to face, depending on who it is, where they are, etc. Sometimes it's over text because that's the only way I can do it, depending on who it is again. And yeah, it's been a long journey of 5 years. Of course, I will tag both of them on here, because I'll be posting this on TikTok, if it lets me, because this is over half an hour, and YouTube. I already know not a lot of people are going to see this. The other person who graduated with me in the mentorship of the path is LV. I'm going to tag her too, just because like our own paths are completely different. She is more of the pagan side. I'm everywhere. My paths are all over. I honestly can't even keep track of my own. I just know I'm on so many. I'm just like, I just let it happen. I go with the flow. I've been saying that since middle school or high school. I just go with the flow, just let it happen. You know, of course I still try, but otherwise I just mostly let it happen for the most part. Sorry. Trying to see if there's anything I'm forgetting. Oof. But yeah, I talked to both the people that had mentored me over the last 5 years, and then one of my friends who was with me during, you know, the mentorship. I talk to them on occasions. You know, we have our own lives. You know, it's not every day we talk, but on occasions, or if something comes up, we'll talk, or, you know, just checking up on each other on occasions, for the most part. I think that's all. I mean, if anyone has questions, I can attempt to answer, or I can direct you in the proper way. And I also say that with my business, when people have questions, I'm like, I will try my best to answer. And since this is more social media conversation or video, I can send you to the person who probably can answer the question a lot better than I could, or if I can, even at all. And again, some of this information you can double check on, though some of it you can't really find on the internet. It's either by word of mouth or by book, or from the dragons themselves, which is part of the whole path, because not everything you're going to learn is physical, and that's the thing. It's not all physical, which is why it is the way it is. So yeah, I guess that's an intro to how I started out in general before I got to the Draconian, Draconic path, and where I'm at now. At least on that path more specifically. Again, I'm on a lot of other paths. Some I'm still training for. Some I have finished, or think I've finished. Still gotta confirm some of that though. When I'm more awake, I need an energy drink. Or coffee, probably energy drink. But yeah. Just want to make this video before I go to my PT. So, have a great day.